Okay, this is working. Looks like it. Good morning. Good morning. Hope all well today. I finally got my Stream Deck configured, so we'll be testing this today. We should also have chat appearing on the screen, because I realize obviously with YouTube being there, it's hard to share the chat. Now YouTube chat isn't as active, so I'm not worried about that. Twitch does not like you mingling them. Twitch does prefer, obviously, to stay on Twitch, which I understand. But yeah, so, but for now, at least it should put the chat on the screen, make it a little bit more friendly. It should appear above me. And I can turn the overlay off if I need to. Dota, good morning. How are you? There we go. It's appearing. I can see it. Pretty good. Good to hear. I also chose to, before the stream, start messing with my key light to see if I could get my key light to work through the Stream Deck. So the key light is kind of dumb in that they didn't put a network cable in it, they put wireless in it. So if your computer isn't wireless, you have to have a wireless network to access it. So I have a USB wireless dongle in the Stream PC. So I could have two networks, but it will never connect. So I have to use my phone. The Elgato stuff is functional for the most part, but has its issues. Like the stream card, the one that the screen comes off of, that's a 4K 60, an original series. Never really any problems with that one. The camera, I have to fight that every time I want to turn it on. That's using a cam link from Elgato. That is, and there's all sorts of problems people have all over the place with that. So, current manager is pushing code coverage right now. I'm still not on board. Code coverage is an interesting. How is the camera today, by the way? Is it jerky today, or is it actually good today? Yesterday it looked fine for me. Oh, it looks fine in the video. Yeah. What's the appeal of using code coverage? I guess. Yeah. I sorted it eventually. I rebooted it and whatnot and got it working. The software had gone rogue actually. So I have software to. I use Chroma Cam, which helps blur out the background, right? And it does a pretty good job. And the reason I chose to have the background is obviously there are games behind me on those shells. I don't want to provide too much insight. There's also other stuff, pictures and whatnot. So I wanted it blurred out. And I figured it's better than trying to do the green screen, because the green screen, well, I do have a green screen, but I don't want to pull that out every morning and raise that up and do all that. And I don't want to do the artificial green screen because, I'm sorry, I realized my microphone's not actually in front of me. I don't want to do the artificial green screen because it kind of puts the jaggies around the edge. So yeah. But anyway, let's talk about software rather than stream setup. So I guess what I don't like about code coverage is it doesn't address a problem we have in my mind. Code coverage should be a target, right? If we're talking about code covered by tests, it should be a target, but it should be a developer target. Because I think that, again, the developers should strive to develop good software. Developers should strive to deliver quality on time and not cheat the system, right? And what happens is if management sets arbitrary code coverage goals, developers cheat. So it actually unwinds the process a little bit, right? It reverses the positive effects that targets of code coverage can do. Like I looked at a code base that was mostly TDD. The TDD portion had 100% on 3 to 4 files and greater than 90% on 8 files. If you have no tests, it makes sense to me. But if you have 100 thousands of tests, what good is that? Well, it keeps a measure, right? And again, I don't think management should do it. I think developers should do it as a team. They should agree upon what is our minimum, because then if you drop below, it's visible, right? Code coverage, yeah, yeah, 80 to 90 tests. That's good. So I think again, I think it should be a team-owned component, not a not a management-owned component, because code coverage does not equate to quality. So I'll share a little story. So yesterday I got a text from a friend, previous employer at my previous employer, and he says, "I now know how you felt when you first introduced generics." Because when I first introduced it, it took the team, because they weren't heavy .NET developers. They'd been working in .NET, but not in .NET, right? And I was like, no, we'll just use some generics here and do this. And it was like mind-boggling, which was the first time I was surprised, because it just showed that you can be a developer and not know how to use large chunks of the application stack, the framework, etc. But because they don't know about that, they're using techniques to get around it because they're scared of using it, right? So they're cheating. Yeah, but you're not a 10-year plus .NET developer, right? You're someone who's chasing knowledge constantly. So that's not a dig at you, by the way. But my point was, the developers will cheat. If you give people any chance, people will cheat. But developers, when given constraints and given stuff they don't understand, they will try and work around it to get the job done, right? And again, that's because, I mean, I would imagine that's true of any industry, anything, any people who do a job, that there's people who will try and get it done quickly. But sorry, I ate a cookie bar, for like a protein bar, and it was very gravelly. Um, Pairing doesn't stop cheating. Pairing might encourage cheating sometimes if the wrong pair team up. But you know, yesterday I looked at the code base sample a little bit. They did it well, but our codes are better. Yeah, and code base samples aren't always easy to gauge off, right? Because again, it's built to demonstrate, not to actually work off of. And that's always the problem that people get stuck on. Um, if someone's watching you, the two of you are less likely to cheat on TDD. Generally, yes. It's even more enforced in mobbing. The advantage of pairing is you can hold each other accountable. Yeah, yeah, because you have to agree on. Even if you were cheating, you have to agree on the cheat, right? Um, yeah, and I think you would be. I think you're right, right? Pairing would discourage cheating in general. But no, again, I honestly do believe that the team should be responsible for the ongoing architecture of the application. The team should be responsible for making sure they hold themselves accountable from a quality perspective. The team should own the code and put out something they're proud of. Management should be able to set, we need these stories done in this time frame. Are these possible? Yes, no. That discussion should happen. Developers should be pushed. They should not be allowed to just sit back and go, "Oh no, that's kind of difficult," right? But yeah. That's when because pairing with cheating by definition in school. Yeah, part of it is this manager is coming into an already successful team. It's a manager trying to set their own grounding. Julius, good morning. Well said. And I can't really have disagreements the way it would normally work. Okay. Yeah, that's a hard point to get into, right? But sorry. His team also posted some code. Well, I think that in general we should be professional. We should push ourselves to improve. We should push ourselves to deliver. We also should make sure that we are not cutting corners. And if a team is found to be cutting corners, then yeah, those sorts of measures are going to happen. But arbitrary code coverage estimates coming from a non-technical manager or even an out-of-touch technical manager can be dangerous. I guess I'm unconvinced his group is further ahead than ours, but I mean, what does that matter? Further ahead in terms of development evolution or whatever. So, yeah. Yeah. And that's the important part, right? That's the thing you need to remember. Evolution, improvement, and keep moving forward. And so if even if those goals are set, work towards meeting them. And if you can't meet them honestly, meet them, be clear about it, right? Say, hey, we're struggling here, and use it as an education point, right? If someone is trying to set an expectation on you, right, and you are struggling to figure out how to do it, don't be I love saying this, maliciously compliant, right? And that would involve, okay, I'll give you code coverage, right? I'm gonna stick code coverage all over this thing, and yeah, you're gonna get your numbers, but it's not gonna mean anything, right? Go to them and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. How do we actually do this? And if they're not willing to talk it through with you, then maybe they can't do it. Maybe they're scared of actually doing it and they're just trying to find it. So then maybe you find a middle ground that way, right? Approach it with them as, hey, I have an opportunity to learn here. Like, can we analyze this and evaluate how would you apply the code coverage to this, right? And if they're not a technical person and they're arbitrarily dropping, you need 80% code coverage when we've currently got 70, right? It might be hard to get that other 10% up. There you go. So if you can't see it, you have them demonstrate it, right? So, but you prove to them that it is more than just a number that they can pull up. If you have to do some engineering, right? What you want is in any team, you need allies, right? You need to make sure you have allies at every level, right? So you want to make sure that you keep people on, and that's not doing work for people and getting stuff done quickly. That's making sure that you're honest with them, that you're clear with them, that you don't try and like, I don't think I can do that. No, that's too hard, right? That's give me a few minutes and let me go look at this and tell you what the actual problems are with it, right? It's reliable, being trustworthy enough to say that person knows what they're talking about and they will push back if they need to, and we can have an honest discussion about how to move forward with it, right? I've often got stuck along my career in being grumpy and unwilling to change because I felt I knew the best, and then all of a sudden I've had that moment of hold on, I'm being unreasonable here. I'm blocking this from going further forward because I'm not opening my eyes to a potential solution. It's again why I do encourage the whole, chat, talk, ask questions. Don't assume that I know more than you because I've done this for a while, right? It I want to get out of that headspace, and I don't want to be sat here thinking, well, I know better. I'm going to do this because I know better. I'm doing this because I know what I'm doing enough to do it, and I'm confident in what I'm doing, but it doesn't mean I'm doing it right all the time. So if you feel that I'm doing something wrong, it will feel wrong, right? It may feel wrong to you because your code design is different, whatever. But again, make sure you don't just be upset at that. Make sure you try and work with that person, and see if you can come up with a solution that works for everyone. Right. But it's not just going along with it. Is if you don't see how it's possible to bring up that coverage, or you don't feel that it's possible to do it naturally, then you have to like, hey, look, I realize that we have a goal, but how do I achieve that goal? Yeah. Clear robotic attention. It's worse the more I tell it. A fair amount of the org is into story points also. Yeah. Attainable naturally or attainable through just making it coverage is challenge there. So yeah. Then yeah, you'll meet the expectation. It's just right if people are TDDing. So it's just made again. It's discipline, right? It's keeping that code quality high enough to do so, right? Not slacking on the things that you need to focus on. So you get there. So anyway, let's talk about some other pieces as well. Right, code coverage is something again we will probably definitely review. Probably definitely. Well, we'll definitely have to review, right? Because I mean, even if I run it now, which actually in Rider, because I've not used this in a professional environment, I don't often run code coverage over what I'm doing here. So I know it's possible. Oh, I know how to do it. What you can do in Rider is you can do. How do I do it? Am I mixing this up with PHP Storm? Oh yes, PHP Storm. So in PHP Storm, you can run unit tests, and run coverage as well at the same time. And I'll figure that out afterwards. Not right this second, but yeah. Is there an example project where we use Kafka extensions? Okay, so Kafka extensions. So I published this last night because what I was going to do is I sat down and like, this is the last story in the ticketing thing. I'm like, are people bored of this? Maybe, but because again, I've got to balance. Can I engage people for the stream's benefit? So you're not just turning the stream on and walking away and leaving it every day, right? I do want that little bit of engagement, and you guys have been fantastic. These last couple of weeks have been like some of the best weeks of streaming I've had in a long time. And so I don't want to belabor a point, right? If I'm working on a series of tickets, I don't just want it to feel like work coming into the stream. That's not the intention. The intention is to be doing something fresh. And I thought this through and decided that adding the notes is actually attaching extra data to a thing, so it's worth doing on stream. Because I was going to finish this last night. So what I decided to do was break out the components of the Kafka pieces that I said I would do and make that library available. Right. So this is up on the GitHub repo, Kafka.extensions under my TBD develop. And I went through and I haven't tested this yet. So is there an example project? Not yet. Will there be? Yes, I will create a sample project later on. You can see this is 6 hours ago. It's only 7:29 a.m. here now. So I literally published this at 1 a.m. and then I went to sleep and I got up 2.5 hours ago. So, yeah. So yeah, I figured this was useful to share, but I didn't have enough time to quite refine it. So what I did is I did document pretty thoroughly how to use it, and I actually added some extensions into this that are nicer than the ones I did. So basically the way it works is if you do add Kafka, when you've pulled this library down, it will add the Kafka configuration and provide a builder. This builder, you can then say add dispatching consumer. So if you want to deal with the consumer side of it, you can do that. Or you can do add default publisher. So default publisher is just, it puts iEvent publisher in there. Now this did give me some good design challenges in that there's some interfaces in here that I don't necessarily feel belong in the core library. So to take a dependency on iEvent publisher right now, you take a dependency on this library. So what's the point in iEvent publisher, right? So, but it does it. The pieces are there. All the pieces I use on stream are in there, right? So you then say, oh, I added this as an extra library. I will make NuGet packages of these, by the way, but you're more than welcome to have a look at the code. It's MIT license, etc. So yeah. Rambling Geek, good afternoon. How are you? So this basic worker service, by the way, is just. I'm going to keep using this version until I actually figure out some of those challenges. But the dispatching consumer, no, it's in here. So what I did is this worker service, I added as a basic out the box add basic worker service. So you can write this yourself if you want. It just injects iEvent consumer and starts beginning consume async. So if you wanted the consumers to happen in something else with extra logging, etc., you can do that. Mr. Anhorn yesterday gifted you the sub, Rambling Geek. Not because he wanted to, because he needed to test his credit card, apparently. So you had the benefit of a credit card test. Wow. Okay. DevDad, the DevDad, thank you very much for the raid. Appreciate it. Logan Butler, good morning. Welcome. Wow, thank you. Okay. Now I'm going to have to gauge the, because it was about to give me a Twitch ad. I don't know if I've avoided pre-rolls, but it looks like from the chatters that you are through ads. Hello. Another day, another line of code. Yes. Hope all is well. How did the stream go? Rambling Geek with those bacon butties. Runty Robot, welcome. Pazira, welcome. Hope you're well. How did the stream go? I was lurking a little bit earlier on. I saw the app. You were talking about the app release. Hey Sashi, welcome. Good morning. Stream couldn't have gone better. Nice. Hey Sashi, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. Corporate says 2 lines per day is all we got to do. Yeah, I'm only productive 50% of the time. It's fine. So, okay, well, I will introduce what I'm working on. I guess I'm not used to larger raids, so this is awesome. Thank you. So I'm a .NET developer, and I am working on building a Agile project management platform to actually aim to build an actual product, right? So I'm sharing my process on the stream. I'm going through, I'm breaking off supporting libraries into open source GitHub projects, of which we've got 2 of them so far. Yeah, so we were just going over, I released the library last night, and we were just going over my sleep schedule not being stunning because I released it 6 hours ago and I got up 2.5 hours ago. So releasing code. But I'm using a lot of different technologies in this platform. So far, we're using Apache Kafka or Confluent Kafka. Really, that their libraries are effective enough for me. And yesterday we're working on Couchbase, so we've got some Couchbase components. So we're trying to build up a large scale system here, and yeah, piecing those together. So my general attitude towards the stream is this is not productivity time. This is discussion, learning, growth time. This is, hey, I'm sharing what I'm doing. I'm going through the successes, the failures, the pains. I am very much focused on building an API at this point rather than any UI. So I'm not focusing my energies on trying to figure out, oh, how does this screen work, etc. I'm focusing on what data do I need. So my approach to the development is very much, I'm not taking slices at this point, right? Reason being is I get very stuck on the UI. It's not my strongest part. So yes. A lot of discussion about the Reds and their possibilities of winning the league this year. I am not sure who. I am an import from the UK. Originally, I lived in the UK. Ah, we're talking about Manu. Right. As a Man City fan, then no, I yeah. So, ooh, Liverpool. No, I am actually originally from the Manchester area in the UK. I moved to the US in 2007. So this is what 16 years of New Jersey does to me. No, that's why I wouldn't have. Yeah. Well, nice. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys being in here. It's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the new follows. That's much appreciated. Yeah, like I said, as I go through this project, I will share a lot on stream. I'm trying to use JetBrains Space as my basic place. I use pretty much JetBrains tools. I'm a big fan. Um, so I'm using JetBrains Space until my product becomes good enough to use. I have some opinionated, well, I'm opinionated when it comes to how software doesn't work. And the challenges that teams have with developing software. I've been doing this for a few years, so I have my experiences. But yeah, I'm trying to share what I can. The pieces that are kind of structural definitely don't affect me in the future, and open sourcing these pieces is definitely not harmful to me. So, it's not something that I'm going to give away any of my special sauce with. So, these pieces I'm happy to share, and the development overall is something that I'm trying to demonstrate. Here's how I develop software, right? So, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, opinions, they're all welcome. If it's you are totally doing that wrong, that's okay, as long as you don't then say bye and walk out. Otherwise, there's no discussion there, right? So, yeah. So today we're going to be picking up where I finished yesterday and trying to finish out this first round of stories on tickets. So yesterday, what we had working was we got some Couchbase stuff working. So we were able to add a new user into the system, and through Kafka publish the fact that a new user was added and record them as a tenant user in here, so that when we query tickets from this system, we can join the name and get a list of tickets with an assigned name. So we kind of have covered over, what it means to share the data, the ownership of that data, and who owns what, where it goes, and who needs to access what. So I'm trying to grow my own competencies at the same time. So yeah. So let's start with our branch. I can remove this branch now. T14 is gone. So we're back down to development. I believe I updated this yesterday. So let's proceed. So I do let the ads run on the stream. They do run with Twitch's frequency, like every 30 minutes. If it goes into an ad and you are actually paying attention to what I'm doing, do not, just type in the chat to please stop, and I will immediately not move on from what I'm doing. That is always available. I'm not quite refined enough to be handling that in pop-up screens and stuff. And again, if my workflow is going, then I don't really necessarily just want to stop for the purpose of if people are lurking, etc. But if you are paying attention, you do want me to answer questions on stuff, then yeah, don't be afraid to ask. And yeah, so let's go to branch feature / we are on T15. So okay, so this is another ticket we haven't actually talked about yet. So I'm trying not to develop this in a waterfall manner, considering the concept of the application is to not do waterfall development, right? The overall goal of the application, the differences I am focused on over things like Jira and Trello, etc., is I really want to focus on the visibility and notifications aspect of the workflows. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm building in the capacity for people to be able to follow what is happening with something. So if it's a support ticket, the very root of some stories, right? If it's a support ticket that gets promoted and needs development work, right? It won't be a ticket that we then create another ticket from to work on in another system, right? It will be a ticket that evolves to become a piece of work. All the notes come along with it, all the people that are working on it come along with it, in as much as they are now able to visibly see that ticket no matter where it is. And they can see the progress of that ticket through the system, so they can get notified if it's delayed. And delayed is a concept. So we have due date. We can stick dates, and we can have unscheduled, right? That's not its due date. Well, that's a due date, but what I'm trying to put on is a review date, and that review date is not optional, right? It will default to the end of a sprint, or it will default to a week from today, etc. But it will never be unset. It will always be here's your next review cycle for this ticket. And the goal of that is to keep people accountable, or help people keep themselves accountable for the out of control stories, the stories that become backlog fluff. I doubt there's many people in here who haven't seen a backlog of hundreds of items and then be like, I need to prioritize that. I don't want to prioritize that. It's just a lot of mess. I have to understand everything I'm doing. So my goal is to make a backlog that is automatically prioritized by its review date. So those that need to be reviewed sooner are up at the top, and you don't get control of that backlog. So I want to implement some features like that. My experience has primarily been with Jira throughout my career. So I'm very much biased towards disliking that piece of software. It does its job, but people try and make it do too many jobs, and every product falls foul of that, right? But what I want to try and avoid is spreadsheets on the side. I want to try and avoid hey, where are we with this story, right? A developer who's worked on a piece of work that's now sat waiting for release should not have to worry about who's responsible for dealing with the delivery or whatever, right? If there's a deliverable component, DevOps will have that ticket appear in their sprint, and they'll be able to work on that same ticket and add notes to that same ticket, and or the story, sorry, and work on it. And the original concept, the phrase that kickstarted me to try and tackle this problem is pass the ball, right? It's the ball's in their court now, right? I don't want that to be a developer having to chase up another team to do their job. If they're delayed, that should be very visible and apparent to everybody involved without any extra interaction from a developer. So that is kind of where I'm heading. Will it work? I don't know. It might do, it might not do. If nothing else, throughout this process, I will stream my adventures, my failures, my successes, and yeah. So let's talk about this story, because I'm already off to a bad start in that I've dragged it into a sprint and I'm not actually ready for the story. But yeah, as a user, I should be able to attach notes to a ticket. So attaching notes to a ticket should be how do I do that? So this is the difficulty of being the technical person as well as the product manager, right? In that I am biased in my understanding of the implementation details. So I've got to make sure I try and keep that out. What do I want to see? Well, right now we have an API. That's all we have, which is good, right? So I should be able to retrieve a ticket and see a list of all notes on the ticket ordered by date, added, descending. Technical requirement, right? Ordered by most recent first. That's more PM speak. So as a user, I need to be able to see the notes attached to a ticket so that I can understand the discussion and work that has happened, any communications with the customer, etc. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to build up little pieces that I'm not afraid to change later, right? I'm not trying to end this piece. Every piece will be evolved eventually, right? Because I just kind of put some text in there that made me think, oh, I actually probably should think about that concept, right? So a communication with the customer might fit in here, but it might not be a note added by a support user, right? It might actually be sent an email to the customer. Here we go. It's regarding this ticket. Here we go. There's visibility, right? So again, that conversation over time should be visible, but there might be different ways of getting those notes into there. But I'm not going to worry about that right now because I don't have any of the infrastructure set up, and it's a wish list item that is way. So the immediate need is obviously being able to see the ticket and the notes, right? So at this point, I have, let's imagine this is the planning phase, right? Static inner flow. Thank you for the follow on Pizzera. I don't know if I said thank you, but thank you for the follow as well. So let's say this is happening 2 sprints before the actual work is actually being done, right? I'm not trying to promote waterfall as the process here, right? Which unfortunately I kind of am because I'm working on top of it. The developers sit down with the product management and we discuss this ticket. right? Or this story. I keep saying ticket because the word ticket's in front of me, and it shouldn't be. It's a story. I'm differentiating the word ticket from story because I need to start introducing that concept at my application level, right? So, okay, so we don't have a way of pulling up a ticket right now, right? We don't have. I can see a ticket. I can see a list of tickets. Do you want the notes in the list of tickets? No, that's a lot of data. We don't need that. So we need to be able to retrieve a single ticket, right? So is that part of this story? Yeah, it could be done as part of this because now, because I'm saying I should be able to retrieve a ticket and see a list of notes on the ticket. So we haven't done get a single ticket before, but this is kind of the first need for it. But we've also got this work where we now need to say, oh well, now we need to add a note to that ticket. So we've only got the API, and even in reality, if we're developing a UI, adding the notes to a ticket requires a ticket to exist. So this is more work than it should be done in a single story. We need this story first, right? So we need another story. As a user, I should be able to retrieve a ticket. I should be user. I need to bring up. I'm doing it here, right? I'm bringing up a single ticket. Details for a single ticket. I expect to see customer description. So again, on this is a story, right? This has a title and a description. What I've gone with ticket is actually a customer name right now. It's not a description, right? Not a title, because there is no title for a support ticket, just the customer and then the description of the problem, right? I expect to see customer description, assigned user or unassigned name or unassigned. And when I say user name, I literally mean their name. We're only capturing name, not first name last. So yeah. I expect to see customer description, assigned username or unassigned. Review date. So we specify a review date as part of a ticket as well, right? And a ticket is no different in that respect. You don't want to lose visibility of it. So I apologize for my setup. My setup is the chat is quite far over to my right. The camera's there. So if I'm talking to the camera, I can't read the chat. So if I look to the side, it's just because I'm reading the chat. I'm not fancy. I don't have a teleprompter or anything. So customer description, assigned username or unassigned, and a review date. That's all we need for this piece, right? We don't need to have anything else. And this is support tickets. Parent issue is this one. So let's create that. I'm going to leave them both in progress because I feel that we can probably achieve both of these in this stream, right? So let's focus on that one first then. As a user, I should be able to retrieve a support ticket. So T22, retrieve ticket. Now, I probably have put in the groundwork for some of this already, so this might be a very quick story, but it might just be refining it and making sure it's doing the right things. And I might not have put any of the framework in, so we'll see. So let's go to work items, endpoints, tickets. By the way, yesterday we had a problem with the token subproperty. Yeah. Lie down, dog. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on puppy number 1. If they need to go out, I need to go take them. Yeah, so the problem with the ticket, so the problem with the support token yesterday was this property gets removed, right, in the actual claims, and that's because Microsoft swaps it out, and that gets put in the name component of the identifier. So this is the name, right? That, I mean, that might be just Auth0 using that and how Microsoft maps it. So what I've learned so far is different frameworks have different ways of mapping these things, these claims. So I actually have reached out to Corey Weathers, who is another streamer. He actually works for Auth0. And I asked him if in the new year he'd be interested in popping in and going over, you know, how we're using Auth0, kind of a little bit of a chance. Like we had Matthew, we had the lucky chance to have Matthew in the stream yesterday where we were working with Couchbase. Something similar. Get if Corey could drop in. He's a fantastic streamer. He doesn't stream as much anymore. Super relaxed and super fun and energetic. So yeah, maybe we can get him in the stream in the new year, and get some further information on this sort of stuff. Because again, I can't be an expert at everything I'm doing here. That's the unfortunate truth. So, you know, I understand the basics of using the claims. I understand how to use these tokens. I understand how to get the code to actually appreciate them. And I have to learn based upon what I need at any one time. So it's the balance of trying to be a single dev, trying to do full platform, right? And it's why I do believe that, you know, full stack development it's not necessarily a myth, but to say you can do everything in the full stack well is, I would imagine very few people can honestly say, oh yeah, I do React or I do whatever and I do it perfectly and I do it really great and I do the backend really great and the database, I'm practically DBA, right? I understand every single component of every single system. Right? Understanding that they exist and understanding how to work in them is one thing, but being expert at everything is a very difficult thing. And that's why I kind of said last week when Dota was saying what was my kind of speciality, and I'm a generalist as far as a developer goes. And I feel that I'm a competent developer. I feel I can navigate code pretty well, but you know, it's growth. So yeah. But yeah, the sub property gets swapped out, and we'll have a look at that afterwards. I'll show you what happens. We'll look at identity versus the actual tokens, and we'll see that. So if I don't bring it up, remind me. But thank you for prompting, Essa. I do appreciate that. It is worth going over, being that it's kind of, if someone didn't check the Discord, yeah. While there are people in here, let me try and do this. Let's see if this works. Yeah, there we go. Stream Deck coming in handy. So I do have a Discord. You know, anyone is more than willing to welcome to join. I do have a poll running right now in one of the channels for a coding challenge, which I will take up next Friday. I have another day off next Friday, so it's can be a bit of a longer stream, in which I will do a pick a coding challenge from those three and try and in the stream read through the challenge. I haven't pre-read them. I've just kind of briefly scanned them to figure out that'd be interesting for me. They're all out of my wheelhouse, and then we'll try and tackle it on stream. How I would approach the design, how I would approach this, you know, share my process a bit more, so we can, you know, kind of review. Okay, so we do not have get, right? So the way I structure this is I'm using our Dallas's API endpoints library, and this gets me away from controllers. controllers are a big ball of mud waiting to happen in most cases. Controllers become dumping grounds, because what happens is you end up with a controller that's called tickets, right? The tickets controller. And then every single piece of functionality that might be involved in tickets ends up there. And I feel actually this is what gets away from REST quickest, right? I'm not trying to be RESTful, right? I'm trying to be realistic and pragmatic about how I'm developing this. I'm not trying to say I'm building a REST API, right? I'm building an API and I'm holding to some standards, but I'm not necessarily going to claim I'm a RESTful API. But I feel that controllers become areas for losing features, right? So if I have a tickets controller, then I have a tenants controller, and I have a this controller and that controller. They kind of become buckets that you have to neatly fit into. Using this, I can break up the actual functions into very clear areas. Tickets exist, yes, but I have to fit within this bound. So I have to ask the question, what am I trying to do, right? If I'm trying to get a list of users that have tickets, what does that mean, right? What does that mean to the API? What does that mean to me? So I have to ask the question. So I have a delete action, right? And this is a endpoint base, and all it does is mediates a request out to delete the support ticket. Similarly, list. Now, list is the only one that's kind of weird, because list is not a verb, obviously, right? List is a get, but it's a general get on tickets. So as long as I'm consistent in this pattern, I'm fine, right? So if I do now, which I need to do, get, right? I need to do base endpoint base async. I always mess this up. Endpoint base async. That's impressive, Copilot. That's very impressive. Wow. I'm going to do it. I'm going to fill it in, because it is almost exactly correct. Oh, what did that cut out then? Oh, I didn't do it well the second time. Public class get. Oh, it got confused the second time. That's not fun. You have to forgive me. So the key light's up there. The key light is necessary, otherwise the camera doesn't look right. But it's kind of shining enough that the screen is slightly obscured. So it's hard sometimes to tell what's grey and what's actually real code. Anyway, let's put that in. No excuses. It got it right the first time, almost perfectly. So I kind of follow, again, a pattern, right? I'm trying to be consistent through building this software, right? So consistent software, consistently written, consistently tested, consistently worked on software is going to be far more approachable. So I follow solid patterns, not solid principles. I'm just following patterns of, okay, I need to get an endpoint in place. Okay, let's create an endpoint. Now it does not need to do anything logic wise, right? So it's going to send that request on to get something to do that, right? So CQRS style, I have queries and commands, right? And the mediator library I'm using definitely supports that way better than Mediator. That is for the purpose of versus, right? That versus that. So it supports iSender, right? So in here, I can say iSender, sender, right? And that is now my mediator implementation added. Now for this, I do not believe in unit testing queries, especially in this one. That would be very difficult to do. I do need to get to integration testing and a deeper level of testing, but I feel that productivity on the overall app to get it to a certain phase is more beneficial for people than it is for me to bog myself down in figuring out how I do integration testing. I do have to stop and do it at some point, and I probably should do it after this set of stories, after this next set of stories is done, because it's a good stopping point, right? It's a good review point in that I have the first piece of actual functionality in there, right? So, yeah, that's where we're going to go. But I'm just prefacing, I don't believe in necessarily unit testing queries because they're not exactly effective. The way I build these up is this class is named of the feature that I'm using, right? So this is called get tickets, and it has a query record underneath it, and it has a handler, right? So this is wrapping up that mediator behavior. The commands and queries, they don't need to live in separate folders. They don't need to live in separate areas of the application. They don't need to be shared, etc. They go hand in hand. There's no reason for me to have some crazy swap out, if I had feature flags to do certain different behaviors, maybe. But considering the way mediator works, that would all be compile time stuff. You'd have to put in ifs, preprocessor statements, basically. So this is called get tickets. So we're going to literally create a class get ticket, right? And it's going to look awfully similar. The way this works is, what I do is when you sign up for the system, I create a tenant, right? That creates a record in this database. So we have a tenant, and we assign the user to that tenant and an address, because you have to enter an address. And then we publish some events. One of those events is that a tenant was created. The Kafka event is published. Another event is the user was registered, and that turns around and within the tenant management piece makes a call out to auth0 and registers a new user in auth0 aligned with the user we've added. Users in here, we do capture the email and name and whether they're verified or active, etc. This identifier is shared with auth0, so I can one-to-one the user, right? And so the user's registered in auth0. That Kafka event of tenant created is consumed by the work items piece right now and says, oh, I need to establish a tenant within Couchbase. That sets up an actual scope within Couchbase for that tenant and establishes some basic collections. And then the tenant user is also published as an event to Kafka, which also then configures the user in there, so we can track the name in there. We don't need email, we don't need any extra information, just the name and the ID goes to Kafka, and is consumed by work items right now. So there is a whole workflow there. So getting the ticket here will be a matter of taking the identifier and the tenant identifier, which is retrieved from the user, sorry, I mentioned the word user then, and I'm thinking I might have some permissions to question here, so we'll have to go into this a little bit. But anyway, let's move forward with this. So I need to assign a query, right? So I'm using records because they're nice and clean for this purpose. So I will always call it query when it's a query. I will always call it command when it's a command. It just fits nicely, and putting it in the class. This is Jimmy Bogard recommended doing this in his mediator kind of best practices, and it fits really well because it means you're not, from the top side, you're not talking about you're not creating a get ticket command and then creating a get ticket handler. So there's no handler here. It's just queries. Here's a query. Here's a command. Here's a command. Right? It does meet quite a nice organizational structure. So I talked about consistency before. And one thing I keep failing at is consistency in my parameters. Right? I went on this tangent a little bit the other day in that PHP is particularly bad for how parameters are ordered. I've been working a lot in PHP the last year, and core methods within the PHP framework are just, you might talk about an array, and one time you might pass in the thing you're searching first and then the array, and the next time you might pass in the array, then the thing you're searching, right? There's all sorts of weirdness there. So, okay, so in here, we can name commands and queries according to features instead of folder naming. Yes. Yeah, I'm not structuring it all under the folders. It's just queries and commands, and then so user identifier. Again, for those new to this, I will always say identifier when I mean an identifier that is shared across systems. It is a publicly available identifier, right? If you pass around the ID of a record around your system, right, and I mean ID in the terms of a primary key on a table, a thing that is generated by the system that's holding the data. If you pass around an ID and then your system has to be rebuilt or you have to change the data structure, there might be a knock-on effect, right? So what I do is every table that I create that has a primary key identifier ID, I keep that private. That is only within the system that works with it, and it can pass that ID around within inside of itself, as long as it's talking about the object. But if that information goes beyond the walls of that service, then it's got identifier, and that identifier will never change. If we move the data around, we should keep that identifier with that data, and that keeps that. That gives you the freedom of saying, I need to change the schema, but without breaking your public API, because you can, as long as you still maintain the API, then a consumer's never going to know, right? So this gives you a lot more freedom to use identifier. So this is an iQuery, and it's going to take a result, and it's going to take a ticket view model, right? For right now. That's not going to look like that afterwards. So let's create the handler. Copilot is, for the most part, pretty incredible. But the one thing I don't like is, so I've got it set to not use public code, or not share my code publicly and not use public code. So it's using my code base in theory. But it does make things up, which is, it can suggest a method and it doesn't exist. So let's look at, I'm going to use this for reference because it's just the quickest way. So unit of work, not quite a unit of work, but as best I can align right this second. So Couchbase is a document DB. It has a SQL layer, which is now termed as SQL++ laid on top. So you can join collections. Again, as I mentioned before, I have a scope. So the scope is the tenant that I'm working in, right? So what I've done is when you say, hey, context.begin query the tenant identifier, I give you back the scope. So everything you're doing from here on in is working with the collections within that scope. So as close as it can be, it's kind of a unit of work, right? Because I'm scoped to that piece. And I didn't want to override the word scope because then I'm bringing up the Couchbase concepts right up into this layer and using their terminology. And if I swap that out, then, I'm not likely to swap the technology out, but the reality is I don't want to bleed the thing I'm trying to abstract right up into the layer I'm using. So there we go. So I call that ticket identifier, and it is ticket identifier. That's tenant identifier, because I always need a tenant identifier. I think unit of work abstraction is very nice. Thank you, appreciate that. It's it does work. That is for certain, right? Okay, so we need a context. When I have one argument, I have no issue using. I was just about to say I was going to go here, and I'm like, what did I do over there? I want to try and be consistent. When I have one argument like that, I don't necessarily mind primary constructors, right? Especially in this environment where I'm not going to change that thing. But it does get kind of messy with multiple arguments, and obviously the permissions around it, right? Like I can't mark that read only. I can't say this is a. If I have a local context, now I have to do this dot, which is something I do not like doing. Actually, what does that argue with me for? Can it resolve? And I can do this, but the tooling generally complains about it. Ooh, Rider doesn't complain about that. Visual Studio doesn't like that one. Oh, I'd like that. I prefer that standard. Because I do like the underscore, because it dictates clearly that it's not a variable from within this scope. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to create a an editor config file at some point and put the rules in. And then, yeah. I kind of like that. I'm going to do that. Ryder's not complaining at me. I'll rename that one. Oh, Ryder's complaining about that one. You didn't complain about this one. Oh, now you do. You caught up. Can I create a rule? Nice. At least there's another argument for being consistent with your code, right? Because I named it the same in here and here, it knew what it was talking about and was able to change all the instances of that. Maybe I can find a rule to override that. But I don't want to. I do not like seeing, big comments saying override this naming rule. That's never fun. Okay, so I get the unit of work. I then need to get my query, right? So here we go. So yeah, something like that. So this is a little bit of a cheat. It's not quite using the specifications library. So in the SQL layer, I have used repositories and I have used Ardalis's SQL specifications. What I've tried to do is mimic the same behavior here, and it does kind of work. It is actually achieving what I want it to do in terms of code organization, etc. Copper Beardy, good afternoon. How are you doing? Hope things are going well. So yeah, so sorry about that. I had to type something. So it kind of fits. It does organize the code neatly, and it does put it out of the way, and it does allow me to reuse these queries. So and I'm following the same pattern and the same naming convention because it does work again. So let's call this ticket by ID. Again, I've got to be consistent on that. It is an identifier, not an ID. And that is purely to name it so that I am making sure that I am very clear about what it is I'm using, and I'm not using ID. So it's an I specification. We're going to go with ticket view model for right now. It works for right this second, right? And the way I do this is in the constructor, I set the query, right? I have an actual class. And in here, I say query. I twiddled my thumbs waiting for Asgard's Wrath 2 to be released in the Oculus Quest 3 in an hour and 40 minutes. No, wait, hour and 39 minutes. I'm watching the clock. Ah, you're a VR addict now, are you? Nice. Select star from tickets where meta ID equals. So in this instance, meta ID is the ID property of the tickets, which I have aligned to be the ID that I'm passing in, right? This is using syntax for queries, which is interesting. Apex, good morning. How are you doing? When we are doing SQL, but we're doing SQL against Couchbase. So, yeah. Did I? Oh, I did not. So for those interested in a game development, I don't think I got to do this yesterday. Apex is a relatively newer streamer, new to the streaming, recently became an affiliate and is working on Godot, also with C#. So worth checking out. Doing something actually very similar in game development as I'm doing here, in building the groundwork and focusing on that rather than jumping straight to the visual components. Doing some very cool stuff with interop with behavior trees yesterday that were written in Godot script and using the C# side to communicate back and forth. So doing cool things. So let's get that query there. Because this is Couchbase SQL, I'm not particularly panicked, and I'm going to control this, right? I'm not particularly scared about SQL injection here, right? I'm not passing strings. So if I do here, and this is the mistake I made yesterday, by the way. So yesterday on the stream, to end, I ran out of time, but I was struggling with getting the query to work. So what I'd done is I'd actually put backticks here. It doesn't like that. Yeah, you like it? Is it working well? I didn't want it to sit there. I wanted it to be readable so that at least it comes up for YouTube as well. But then I didn't want it to sit there. So yeah. Yeah, so what I did is I actually used I don't like using Streamlabs, but Streamlabs has a tool that I've hooked in. So I used their chat component and embedded it on the stream. Figured that was the least obstructive to leave it like floating and doing that, yeah. So I don't need to worry about SQL injection. I've got the right ticks there, right? So that's perfect, kind of, but it won't, and it will map, I think. But obviously, yesterday we added more to ticket view model. So in all tickets spec, we added this, right? So this is really the query I want, with the exception of that piece, right? So I want to get an assigned user. Let's see if I can do the unassigned, right, as a username. Joining tenant users, and where the ID is the ticket identifier. Okay. Ticket by identifier spec. And we're passing the ticket identifier in there, so that's good, right? And then we are using, again, another add Dallas. Actually, I can... that's going to bug me. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about the formatting. That's what I'm trying to fiddle around with right this second. Like, I get the long line problem, right? That makes that one very unreadable line. Let's go in and add another. We're going to make this easier because I'm going to need this time and time again, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an task of T entity. Nullable task of this is going to single or default T entity and I specification. This is actually, again, I'm mimicking what exists. I'm not trying to say I'm doing something original here, but this behavior is useful. Specification where T entity is a class and it is nullable, right? So what that does is gives me the ability to do single default. Again, we're going to review some of that stuff, and it's essentially the same thing. Public async task, T entity, single default. That'll work. Yeah, that pretty much does exactly what I want it to do. Okay, so that gives me the ability to now do that, still to give it a spec, but get one back, right? So that's perfect. I don't have to wrap that code up. And again, that's the benefit of abstracting this, right? I'm not just writing code for the sake of code. I'm not bleeding up the Couchbase concerns up into this layer. I'm able to reuse those pieces time and time again and worry about making my code readable. So yes, I'm writing an abstraction around an abstraction because Couchbase API itself is a wrapper around an HTTP API, which communicates with Couchbase. But this aids in my readability. So maybe I lose a microsecond, maybe I lose 5 milliseconds overall. But considering the performance throughput of the application will be more than enough, and I will be able to scale it appropriately, the cost of a little bit of performance for a lot of readability and reusability is worth it in my book. So that's why the trade-off there, right? I could have just brought that behavior up into this layer and queried it and just got the single default from that list. But now that kind of makes that a reusable component. The pattern's there, and yeah. So. Sorry, just checking on puppies. So for those who haven't been in here before, I do have 2 young puppies who recently have been very, very good for the first few hours of the day. About, they just sleep, they play later, but I do not want to neglect them at the same time. So I got to keep an eye on them. Okay, so with that, I can do return. If ticket is no, result, yeah. Otherwise, return success. So I'm using the result pattern, the result library again from Ardalis, right? It seems so far that if it's not JetBrains, it's Ardalis. Steve Smith is an incredible developer. His libraries make coding really easy. This sort of stuff, the patterns and all those things, they really make sense. And I think the reason I appreciate them so much is because, you know, for years I've felt this way about software, right? I've felt that these are good things to do. So yeah. Okay, so we have our get. That would be an honor. This is the ticket identifier. I'm not trying to save memory bandwidth, right? I want to be clear about what I'm expecting. So I'm not going to panic about this, especially in what I'm about to do anyway. So HTTP get namespace. So using this, there's actually an extension method to an extension option to controllers called use namespace route token. What that allows me to do is namespace there, if you haven't seen this before, and it will pick up that object, that name from the namespace. So it will default to tickets. And it means if I move this around, that names and change the API, I change this to be something else, like support tickets, etc. As long as I refactor the endpoint will change with it. And I'm going to do ticket identifier grid. This is going to do from is it from route or from query? Let's go with from route first. Right. So now I just need to do var result equals await. Oh, so with action result, with action result of ticket view model. Right. I haven't actually. I think view models. Yeah, view models is under my application layer right now. I haven't actually. Sometimes I break that out as its own library. So it's worth doing. But yeah. So yeah, for those who are new into the stream, for those who've not been in before, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to challenge what I'm doing. Feel free to learn more. Again, I'm not doing this to be productive. I'm doing this to grow myself. So I'm more than happy to divert, and that should be those, not that. And review stuff and do stuff like that. So feel free. I just want to make sure I continually say that sort of stuff, because I think it's important as you come into a stream. Some streams are no backseating. Some streams are, learning and relying upon the chat. Yeah, so you don't necessarily understand what sort of stream you're going into, and I want to make sure that it's clear that I genuinely know what I'm doing. I promise. But it is okay to ask questions. It is okay to challenge what I'm doing, or have an opinion, right? And opinions are good, as long as you can take being told, no, I don't agree, I'm going to do it my way anyway, right? Then we're all good. Okay, so this needs an action result of ticket view model, I believe. Public override await. Okay, what am I missing? I'm missing something about the signature. Task, action result, ticket view model, parameters. Don't see anything different there. Oh, I'm being dense. Sorry. Okay, sender.send, get ticket, query. I know what I'm doing, honestly. Return, again, that's Copilot deciding it knows what code looks like, right? That's not a method, right? Result.isSuccess, okay, with result.value. Otherwise, bad request. So I will have to do a review later over the API itself. Like, how is it going to handle? Like, is this not found? Should I return not found if you just pass an ID? Right. Now we get into another thing. Authorize. Policy equals policies dot support user. We're going to go with that for right this second. This comes with it a new challenge, right? What if that ticket is assigned to somebody else? Should I be able to read that ticket? Is that my concern here? I don't know, right? Should I worry about that at this level, basically? Or is it kind of a client concern as to, actually it would be a concern of the patch, and then it would be, patches update that ticket, which again will need changing. Some of these pieces were implemented as part of the prototype phase, so and I've just kind of rolled through rather than restart for being practical. But the patch should protect that you are the owner, so I think there'll be a validation in that one, and I think that will be a validation at the handler level that you're allowed to do it. But that'll be a whole different challenge. So anyway, so right now, if you're a support user, you can do this, right? So let's see how far we get. Do we get it first time? I should get into the habit of running the little polls. I've just written a load of code. Does it build? Yes. Okay. Does it work first time? Rarely. The again, unit testing this is not practical, because all I'd be testing is that I made a call to the query with a spec. I can't validate that spec because I'm not doing string matching there. So an integration test fits best for this, right? Populate the data, validate you can retrieve it, do all those things. But again, I've got to decide how I'm going to go about integration testing, how I organize, because I've gone through several different approaches to that through the years. I never really landed anything that I like, and then I've worked on projects that have been, no, we need to get this done now. We can't spend that time. So some of that will be, a lot of that will be a lot of learning. So I'm kind of excited about that part at the same time as being a little scared. Okay, so we're up and running. So I'm going to imagine our ticket is not going to be valid. And today I'm having a heck of a time seeing like, to me, the entire top panel is invisible almost. It looks like you can see it on stream just fine. So maybe I changed my settings a little bit too prematurely. Okay, so we need to all these things I need to read through. Git remote. I pushed the library last night. So let's go to here. Let's go to the services. Let's go to the placeholder login and log in. We'll log in as Matthew. So there we go. There's our token. It refreshes. So the default expiration on an Auth0 token is actually pretty long. I think it's 86,400. So it does refresh nicely, which for the development purposes works just fine. So now we go over to here. Can I get tickets? Right, I can get tickets. So I am Matthew. So this is returning, and this is actually where the stream didn't finish yesterday, right? I finished just before this problem. So this is tickets assigned to me or unassigned, right? Now there's no rule in place. So as long as I give it a valid ticket ID, I can retrieve the ticket right now. It doesn't matter if it belongs to me or not, as long as I'm a support user. So let's create a new HTTP request. HTTPS localhost 7301, localhost 7031, tickets, right? My auth token, my token, and no body, and I need to get an ID, right? So let's get T9 unassigned. Okay. Get single ticket. Okay. Does it work? Oh. It got all the way down there though. It got right to querying Couchbase. It was my query that was bad. So what did I fail on there? I'm calling that a win. I win. Okay, so let's do this. We can go to Couchbase and we should run the query. Right? We can go over here in Couchbase. Do you give me the ability to say new? Actually, let's go and look to see if this is going to work. Liquid Sky, that's the problem. Let's do LS developer. Autofill. Go here. Let's make that LS developer. There we go. Apply. Test connection. Yes. Buckets, work items. You let me write queries. You let me copy passwords. It's all local, so I'm not worried about leaking those passwords. Okay. So what I'm using here is JetBrains Data Grip. The reason I'd like to use this is because if I can do this, then all my querying stuff can live in here. I actually can, if you can remember where the panel is, see Kafka. Because services, I can see Kafka. So I can actually watch Kafka from within here as well, and I can consume it. So I can actually use this as a one-stop shop for all the data in the application, which I call a win. Okay. Just realized that's how it was ID. That's fine for now, but yeah. Okay, the server failed planning the query. Okay, so we got the same error. So we validated that we can query using data grip. And that's why, because I didn't do tickets. Underlying key space not found in data store, tickets. Server report. Let's see if that still fails in. That doesn't fail there. Okay. Matthew did actually recommend using a different plugin. I don't know if that's going to be plugins. Couchbase install. So because all JetBrains IDEs are based off IntelliJ, all the plugins work in all the environments. So I can use this in Rider, I can use this anywhere. So it's pretty handy. That's the default JetBrains implementation. So let's have a look. Couchbase. There you go. Name. Localhost. Localhost. What's the connection string there? This is worth having because the Couchbase localhost. The out of the box tool, the website tooling is for writing queries is not what I want to be doing. I'd much prefer to have an actual tool like this. And I just went through all that to then go autofill, copy. Save. Oh no, it's working, it's fine. Okay, so let's go here. Let's go here. There's our data. That's cool. ID error code. Can I query it though? New query workbench. Okay, here we go. So we get a workbench. Let's go back over and do that query. How do I run it? Execute. Key space not found in CB data store. Default tickets. No bucket name tickets. Ah, because no context. That's the problem. Work item. So I need to set the context that I'm working within, right? That's the actual problem. There we go. There's our data. Sweet. Okay. So we can explore Couchbase. We can actually create local Couchbase Lite databases. There we go. That's good enough for me. Move to left bottom. There we go. Add breaks ends. So one of the things I wanted to test is what does that do? There we go. There we go. It's like I found a new toy. I'm using the Stream Deck. Because I don't want people to leave because ads are playing, but ads do help get people into the stream. So it's kind of it's always been a balance. I can guarantee it's not about greed. Okay, so that will now work when I do the right change in this query. Right. So get ticket. So the challenge was my ticket by identifier. You need to say the object you're getting the metadata for to get the ID, right? So that's why that's not working. And now we should be able to retrieve a ticket. So all the pieces in between were working. All the components wired up properly. We got our query, we got a single default. All that tried to work, it just failed. So the next thing that could fail will be that single default when it gets a result back. So go here, get a single ticket. There we go. There's our ticket. And it's unassigned, which is correct because we now have, if we go get this ticket, which we know is assigned to Matthew, right? We should get Matthew. There we go. Nice and fast. So that was 12.6 milliseconds. And yes, I know that's on a Docker instance Couchbase running locally with my server all running locally, but that's still nice and fast for me. It seems to cache that pretty effectively. Okay, so we have the ability to retrieve a ticket. We have the ability to now get single default in Couchbase. Yeah, I think that would classify this story. I should be able to see customer, description, assigned username or unassigned, and a review date. Customer name, description, assigned user. Amal, good morning. How long has that message been there? So I am streaming on YouTube as well. The YouTube channel is linked below the stream. All these videos do get saved on YouTube, which is kind of nice. My apologies, Amal, if I've not seen your message for a long time. I do glance across, but oh, good. The YouTube chat is not as distinct and shiny and colourful as the Twitch chat, so it's much harder to see glancing across. What I want to do is I want to get a screen set up here, right in front of me, so that I actually see the text chat below, and it at least means I'm looking at you when I'm reading the chat. So anyway, yeah. So welcome, good morning. So we have get single ticket. We've met these requirements. Let's commit this. So let's first commit the Couchbase component. So added single or default to Couchbase to unit of work to don't need to explain why that is. And then we added a new endpoint for get. We added a new query and we added a new specification. And that's kind of the slice, right? For right now, because I'm building it from the API up, that is the slice. So added endpoint query spec for retrieving a ticket via the support user can read. So the challenge there is if I wasn't right now, if I'm not Matthew, I can still read that ticket for Matthew, right? Because I am a support user, say. But we kind of identified that in the discussion today, in that right now I'm building this list, and this list is going to evolve. Ultimately, the list of tickets is going to be broader, right? It's not just going to be tickets that are null, not assigned or assigned to me. It will become, get all tickets and filter. But I've got to build on something, right? So I'm building the pieces, and by doing this, I'm actually growing the application behaviors, like adding that single default, right? That story required that feature. I was able to add it because of the time I've spent already preparing that infrastructure layer throughout the prototyping piece. That was time well spent. I was prepared for that change. So this story is done, right? We've completed a story. Now I'm obviously not going particularly fast. I could have probably completed that story in 15 or 20 minutes, right? I'm talking through it, I'm waffling on. I get that, but that's trying to make sure that my thought process is shared with everybody as well. So let's go to GitHub. Sharing thoughts is a tricky part. It is. It is tricky. And I know that I like to talk about this stuff. So it does get a little easier. But my thoughts aren't always organized. Oftentimes I'm thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead, and that's another problem as well when you're developing the software. And that's why unit tests become hard, because you're developing the software you're thinking of what it's going to do and you're running ahead of it, and you're not trying to focus on what you need to do now. So that's kind of the discipline I'm trying to instill here for myself. Especially if you have to read and understand first. Yeah, it's yeah. Streaming software development is challenging. It's fun when you get people who are engaged and able to, you know, enjoy what you're doing. I know there's several people who have really shown their appreciation for everything this is doing, and I love doing that piece. So it's worth waffling on about, right? My way is not maybe the best way, but it is working for some people and it is helping. So yeah, let's see if that one works. Yeah, so I'm testing with the Stream Deck features I've put in so far. Again, things like the Kafka extensions here. These are pieces I use for Kafka. This is kind of my wrapper around Kafka. There are other projects out there that do kind of help get you up and running with the Kafka pieces. This is just what I did last night in a couple of hours, based upon the code that I've got in this framework so far. But it does set up adding dispatching and consuming events, and gives you the basics. And I will work on a sample application to demonstrate it in there. But I'm not sharing the core code for this application, but I will share components like that. I implemented a saga pattern using Mediator the other day, and got those pieces in there, and that's working pretty well. So there is lots of different pieces that I will share along the way here as I develop all this application stack. Okay, so we pushed that. We need to go to GitHub. That's why I was heading to GitHub. Let's go to my repositories, Liquid Sky. So let's do a compare and pull request. And I go against development branch. So main will be my release branch, my release worthy component, and development will be development. So I added a query which does what it should do. I added a specification which does what it should do. It queries the actual data. I added a new component to the unit of work to allow me to get single or default in there. And then I added an endpoint, which I put authorization around, and I will retrieve that. The only thing I could test there is if I do, right? Oh, no, F. What happens, right? That's the other thing I didn't test. So my testing of that was not exactly thorough. I'm being a little arrogant in that I'm believing that I'm beyond making a mistake there. So I should test it before I do this merge, right? And ideally, I get unit tests in there for things, and I get integration tests, and they can be run automatically. That way I can spool that up in GitHub as part of a commit action and verify that behavior. So for this, I should have written a integration test is way this should be, right? Not found. Actually, that shouldn't return not found. That's interesting. Or is that because it can't be? That's because that wasn't a GUID, right? Hold on. Let's do this. Let's make sure it retrieves. And now let's change that to 1. Bad request, right? I don't want to say not found, right? I don't want you to be able to, like, if you get access to that endpoint for whatever reason, I don't want you to just be able to try different GUIDs and see what data you can get out. It's a bad request. It's not for that, right? Maybe I put in not found later when it suits, but for right now, it's a bad request. But now I tested it. It won't just make up something. Okay, so we can go up here, create the pull request. And right now I'm just merging these straight through. As I grow, I will put in some CI steps. I will do automatic runs of unit tests. I will do the automatic integration tests, and I will prepare builds of the application, because as I go forward with this, what I need to do is set up a Kubernetes cluster locally to be able to deploy this. That will be, last time I did that for my game development, for my game library stuff, it took me a long time. That's why I actually didn't stream for a long time, because I couldn't share it, because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea how to even talk about what I was doing. I was just kind of muddling through. And it took me over 2.5 months to get the Kubernetes cluster up and running. Thank you for the look, Apex. Okay, so we have that up and running now. And now we just need to check out development here. And update this branch. So the fact that Couchbase's IntelliJ plugin works on all these platforms, I could also install those Couchbase tools in here and stay within Rider for even the development of those things. So I could literally copy and paste a query from the code straight into Couchbase and query the data. I'm not going to do that right this second though. Okay, I'm trying to be very thorough about, he says that he tries to rename a branch, about cleaning up branches as well. So oftentimes you'll get in a mess here, right? Because you'll end up with all the branches that you've merged still existing locally, etc. So I'm trying to be thorough about that part. I have the benefit of knowing when I've merged that, right? In a larger process, that might be merged by somebody else, so you don't know when it's merged, but it is good practice to go ahead and delete. And I do not want to hear, well, what if they have a mistake and we need to see what the code was doing? You've still got the history. So I'm generally against, for the purpose of people in here, I'm generally against being defensive on coding. So I kind of treat it as a challenge to make sure that I'm being as destructive as possible at times in my own respect, so that if someone comes back and says this isn't working, then I have to go and maintain the code. I have to go and look at the code I wrote and write the relevant unit tests. I can't just go back and look, oh, well, I don't focus on the blame. I focus on the let's fix it, get it moving forward. Okay, so as a user, I should be able to retrieve a ticket. So we had to create this ticket to get to this ticket, because this ticket had too much in it, right? Because now we have a need to add notes to a ticket. But this part is not the story, right? This is the verification piece. So we get into that conversation again of, if we're planning stories and stories have to provide value, right? So on that investing, there's actual value. Can I achieve providing value if all I'm doing is adding a ticket here? Because all I'll be able to do is say, yep, I added a ticket. It worked. I was talking about that the other day, was explaining Git to a colleague. He had that asterisk out your words there, Family Geek. I don't know if you put a period in there and it thinks it's a link. I think I've upped the it did that. Didn't know about branches, etc., and was saying when you have merged, delete the branch, put a period in there. Yeah. Yeah, if you've merged and you're leaving the branches lying around, then you're scared of having to go back and verify what was merged, right? So if you squash the commits, so the incoming branch is all its commits are squashed into one commit message and put into the new branch. There I merged. I literally wove the history in there, right? Which I'm fine with for now. So if you squash the commits, you've got one commit that had all the changes, right? If you merge the changes in, you can still go back to any point in time and see what was done at any point in time, because you now have that granular history. But you have to have some confidence somewhere along the way, right? Yeah, you have to trust that you know what you're doing. So yeah, deleting the branches, cleaning up after yourself. Yeah. So I think if I remember correctly, he was creating like uh, folders and creating local repositories, and everything was its own folder with its own copy. Hi Martin, how are you doing? Welcome. Yeah. People can get in a mess very quickly, but um, yeah, I'm trying to be disciplined here in so much as I am removing things as quickly as possible, so I do not have them lying out there. It really is important to try and um, keep this organized, especially early on, because the messier I make it now, the more fragile I'm making the footing for the future. So keep moving forward, keep cleaning up, keep making sure that code is doing what it should do. And again, you'll see over the course of the next several months, you'll see this code evolve and changes come in and out. Right? I'll delete things. I have no problem deleting something that doesn't do what it should do anymore. So I don't think he took in what I say. I mean, it was a lot, but it's up to him to learn as well by playing around with it. Yeah, yeah. If you've not used Git before, it is intimidating. I would consider myself, I'd actually consider myself pretty much a beginner at Git, even though I've been using it for years, because there's so much to learn and do and tinker with. The flows I can follow, the tools I use heavily. Right? I'm not using the command line very often. Once you get beyond, and it kind of comes down again to the consistency thing, right? It's like if you are consistent in how you do things and you are reliably doing what you're asked to do properly and thinking about your workflows, then it kind of works. But the moment you go beyond it and like, oh well, I've got this change here and I've got this change here, and they merge and now they conflict and now I've got to merge these, it's friction. And I consider all failures of, like, when you deviate and you struggle with Git workflows, I think it is not normally a failure of something else. Like your process has not worked the right way, and it's telling you this is friction. Doing good, doing good. Was looking for a stream to have on the side whilst programming something myself. How are you doing? Doing good. I'm doing good. It's a day off work. I am working on my Agile platform. What are you working on? What are you coding today? And I'm honored that this seems to be a stream that you can have on the side. Okay. So as a user, I need to be able to see the notes attached to a ticket so that I can understand the discussion and work that has happened, any communications with the customer, etc. That's a later requirement, right? That's not a now requirement. I should be able to retrieve a ticket and see a list of all notes on the ticket ordered by my most recent first. So I've got an issue here. I have another story requirement. Working in a POS system for a member only bar. So the user accounts for sales going off on the account balance. Nice. That's some point of sale stuff is pretty cool. Are you a C# developer? Are you working in different languages? Obviously, I'm sorry if I'm being nosy. It's interesting to see what other people are working on and you know what I'm always interested in what brought people into the stream. That's definitely, something that I want to target. I know that looking at the statistics, some people find programming is pretty much the main driver into the stream, which, it doesn't really tell me much about what people are searching for. But I do put things like API development, web development, bot dev stuff on there. Actually, I need to, I need to not be lazy with the tags and clean them up after every stream. React front end. I assume that's .NET backend. I've got to figure out. I've got to take off the restrictions because that's Twitch is. I figured Twitch is heavily anti.NET and heavily Microsoft stack, anti-Microsoft stack, because it won't let you type NuGet. Right? It actually censored me for the word NuGet last week. So I think Twitch is anti.NET. So okay. So I need another story because I don't have the ability to add a note. I need to see the notes attached, but I don't have the ability to add a note. So I've yet again, failed on that analysis phase, right? I need to make sure I'm asking the right questions, because if as a developer you take this story at face value and you go, okay, I'll go and do that, then you're going to go and create the story for adding the ticket. Well, you're going to do the work for adding the ticket, adding the comment or the note to the ticket and displaying the ticket. Right. So this story I should be able to attach with a description that has, even as the person thinking about the story and writing the story, I snuck in requirements, right? And this is why this is dangerous and needs, you need to discuss these things. You can't just let this pass, because if you accept this as a developer, right? If you accept this in your sprint, you get everything you deserve. Sorry, I've done this. I'm not being critical of anybody else. I've done this sort of stuff, right? I've accepted this sort of work, and then it's like, well, hold on, this requires me to do this, 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 this. You agreed to it. Because what I did is I put the title, and then I kind of said, hey, I need to see the notes. That's why I want this feature. But that's not the problem, right? Now the problem is, as we discussed, I'm rushing ahead. My brain is going too fast. As I discussed earlier, there is a value proposition, right? Adding a note to a ticket is something that I can do, but I then can't see. So is seeing the fact the ticket exists good enough? So we already identified quite clearly that T22 was necessary because retrieving a ticket wasn't there. So we couldn't pull a single ticket. We don't have a UI. So adding tickets is not part of retrieving the ticket, right? So, and even if we did have a UI, it shouldn't be. And that's kind of why I'm developing the API first, because I'm trying to think about the actual actions I need to take to achieve what is being asked. I'm not trying to build this based upon the UI, because that might change how I design the API and leave the API less suited to being adapted to different UIs. Oh. I think in the interest of productivity, I could proceed with this as is, but I shouldn't. I should actually, I need to be able to attach a note to a ticket. I need to stay realistic, right? I need to stay within the bounds of the API that I'm building. And that is right now, I need to be able to say, hey, this ticket has this note, right? So we get into some fun API design, especially if yeah. As a user, I need to be able to attach a note to a ticket. If the ticket does not exist, no. Let's be realistic. The ticket's going to exist. It's not for the PM to dictate what should happen right now. If we're trying to post a ticket to a closed ticket, post a note to a closed ticket, etc., that concept doesn't exist. So this is in its briefest, most focused functionality. I need to be able to actually note to the ticket. I may receive, and the use case is literally, I need to track information about the issue reported. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Again, for anyone joining the stream, anyone currently in the stream, if you're hanging out, it seems like a lot of the viewers from the raid are still hanging around, which I really do appreciate. Thank you very much. I hope you're enjoying this in some form. I'm not trying to be productive. I'm more than happy to answer questions. I'm more than happy to divert and discuss general practices. There's all manner of things I'm happy to discuss. So don't feel that I need to get stuff done here. As a user, I may receive information on the issue reported. I should be able to track these notes against the ticket for which they were reported. I do apologize if that ad affects you. I'm going to put in that message. I should do that before the ad says it's running. Suppose it's a good time to do. Does it let me do that one straight away? Yes, it does. As a user, I may receive information about the issue reported. I should be able to track these notes against the ticket for issue reported. Okay, we're going to go with that right this second. Right. I'm not going to panic about the case of things not missing, etc. I'll wait for that ad to come out. So I'm going to go longer than normal. I don't know if I'll hit the 4 hours I did yesterday, but I will be going for a little while longer. We'll at least see this story through today. So again, I stream Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern normally. My accent might suggest I'm European, but I actually am US based. So 7 to 9 Eastern, and sometimes on the weekends, but those are more ad hoc. Today I am off work, so I'm streaming a little longer than I would normally. And next Friday I will be doing a challenge stream because I have the day off again. It's Friday, where I will be picking a challenge from 3 suggested in Discord, which can be voted on, and tackling that from the ground up and seeing where I go. Just to share the process of developer being presented with requirements and trying to build something from it. If you share that. So Martin, hopefully the ad did not derail you. Yeah, I'm more than happy to answer a question. That does not bother me.
Okay, so let's go into here. Actually, let me remind myself of the ticket number, T15. Let's branch this. I believe I updated this, but let's just validate. You never click update too many times. There's nothing worse than realizing that you branched off an older version of development and then you have to do, rebases, etc. ESA, open bucket, get document, document does not exist, return, convert the modified ticket object to JSON format, use the replace method of the Couchbase SDK to update the existing ticket in the database, ensure to close bucket and Couchbase connection, return success. Context? Am I missing something? We're going through what I need to do here. Well, actually, yeah, you actually are bringing up a point there. Feature T15 add ticket. So, the beauty of document databases is I don't necessarily need to, because I'm storing the document, I could store. I'm assuming that's what you're going at there, Essa. Um, in that I could store my notes for a ticket on the ticket itself. Right. Now the confusing thing is because Couchbase offers the ability to join on collections, then I could potentially store this as a relational database style and store notes assigned to a ticket. And it's actually where I was going to go in terms of design is like, do I do it on here? And I think I do. I think I had notes on here right this second. Martin, I'm refactoring the core of my app because it wasn't solid and the architecture was getting messy, and currently I'm looking for a good place to define my models and a good place to map them from the API models to the database models. Current setup is my API controllers talking to the services through an interface layer, service talking directly to the database using an EFDB context. Okay. Good place to define your models. Changing the models in my controller seems weird, as that should only check parameter validity and map service responses to action results. But if I change it in the service, that would mean having both data structures in the interface layer, which also seems weird. Wow, that breakfast bar was just all sorts of weird. Set up in my API controls, talking to the services through an interface layer, service talking directly to the database using EFDB context. Changing the models in my controller seems weird, as that should only check parameter validity and map service responses to actual results. So it depends on where you deem it the right place to do the mapping, right? So I'll share with you what I do, right? And again, my whole philosophy for software is that you should be consistent in your software and comfortable with changing it, right? If you're not comfortable, that's an indicator that you need to change something, right? So it's not, I'm not going to say there's a clear, easy, nice, solid rule to follow to do this, right? I'll show you what I do. So for any service, so right now, this application is broken up into 3 components, 2 of which are actual functional. Teams is just a demonstrator. What I have is an API. So the tenant management and work items are the APIs. These APIs are broken down into endpoints. those endpoints are responsible for relaying data to the services, essentially the services. The endpoint itself can have some level of validation, right? Because this is the incoming model, right? So in the case of post, the outgoing model is just a, did it succeed? Or it's an identifier, or it's something like that right now. But the actual, so think of this as an action on a controller, right? I can validate this here because it's okay for me to validate that as part of the API level validation, right? Those are rules, and that's what I've gone with so far. And this is using attribute routing, right? I've since evolved a little bit, right? And I think, yes, when I'm creating a user, I don't use that method, right? I actually use an AI validator, right? So I have this validation here. So my validation rules for that model incoming are now in a fluent validation. But there's another layer of validation, I'm saying, in that I also put validation at the behavior level. So the service to do something. And I think it's in, where is it? Add validators, add authorization. Where did I put that one? Did I put it in work items? Yes. So when I'm adding a new support ticket, there's certain rules that apply to that, right? And they should be, that would be database checks, that would be doing all sorts of other things. So I have the add new support. So this is a validator that exists at the service level. Now, when I say service level, I'm talking about the actual handler of the work. So in this structure, application is actually where everything really lives, right? It interacts with data, it maps objects, it does all those sorts of things in this layer, right? Data is the data specific components. So this is done. I have my DB context here, etc. Now I'm using a library called specifications, and I'm using the extension for entity framework for specifications. So I have a repository, an iRepository of tenant. So I've got my database, my actual database implementation abstracted away from even this piece. And I query that using a spec, but I can also add into it, right? So I'm adding these objects here. I don't query here. If I need to query, I can use spec, and that will build a query for me. And again, it's abstracted away. I do inject a tenant search service, and the reason I do that is because this, right now, these are stored procedures, because it was the best way I could think of doing what I was doing here. I didn't feel that could be translated to DB context. But again, I've abstracted the fact that I'm using DB context away from this layer. By using that library. So yes, I do have DB context. Yes, it is being created, but these and then let me go to the work items. So work items application has queries in it, right? This is using Couchbase, but the same principle applies, right? I'm abstracting the fact that I'm using Couchbase, I'm querying a thing using a spec, and I'm returning that data in the view model form. So I'm not relying upon my controller layer to do the view model piece. The view models come from within the application. So the model, your database model should never make it up to your API layer, right? That's kind of how I've approached that. So the database model never makes it beyond this layer. The view models go beyond this layer and up. But again, this is my design, or this is my implementation. I probably align with some patterns and practices, but I don't believe that that is where I should focus my energy. What I'm focusing my energy on is making sure that I'm consistently following my own rules and building a clean and readable application stack. But yeah, changing the models in your controllers, absolutely. I would not do very much in your controllers. So here I use result. So again, I'm a heavy user of our Dallas's libraries, right? I use result and I pass up the model in the result. So this result can indicate success or failure. So even at the control layer, I'm just mapping success or failure in result to action result, right? But I need to take a quick break. I will be back shortly. I need to do a quick dog walk. I will be, let's see if I can do this on my stream deck. So that should cue that. So I should be able to do switch, and I'll be right back.
Okay, my apologies for that. But again, two small puppies. I don't get to control the timelines all the time. So it is important to make sure I take them out. Hey CLC, how you doing? Welcome. Okay. So, Martin, I hope in some way, shape, or form I gave you some level of answer there. Without knowing, I kind of get where you're heading. Um, you know, you identify that the architecture is messy. Make step changes. If you've got unit tests in there, make sure you are backing yourself up as you go with solid unit tests. Holding to principles, holding to other people's patterns, just hold to a general style, and you'll feel the challenges as you go. And again, the reason I link the Discord is if anyone wants to discuss stuff off stream, you want to share projects you're working on, you want to talk more about things, I'm always open to the discussion. I'm always open to discussing these things in more depth off stream. Obviously, when I'm streaming, I'm kind of focused on something, and I don't mind the derailment. I don't mind going off on tangents as long as it pertains to the general practices we're discussing. And I think it's healthy to have the discussion. But Discord is also great for discussing in more depth something. So feel free if you'd like to join and want to talk more. Yeah, I'd love to discuss more. Okay, so add ticket. So we have an endpoint for tickets, right? Add, that's not add ticket. It's add note to ticket. I want to say as well, obviously the viewer numbers have remained high since earlier's raid. I really do appreciate those of you who are sticking around. You've been hanging out. It's really fantastic. The new follows. I do love doing what I'm doing here. I know this is not the most entertaining of streams in terms of my dulcet tones. There's no music. It's not very easy to necessarily sit and listen to like some streams are. But I do like to discuss as well. So, and if you're watching and you want to review it later, the VODs are there on Twitch, and also all this is going to YouTube at the same time, and the YouTube videos are available as well. So you can always review back what I've done. Okay, so notes. Essa, thank you very much for the 100 bits. I appreciate that. Thank you. Notes. So my instinct is to kind of put notes attached to the ticket. Document DB, it supports it. I can put an array of notes on there. Just keep adding a list of notes essentially. I can add to it. Downsides. Not very many. Indexing might be a challenge for Couchbase. Maybe it's not. The fact that Couchbase does provide those SQL layers does suggest they kind of don't really object to having relational collections. So what's the right way? I'm not entirely sure. Again, I am considering storage at this point. I'm not considering search. I'm not considering any sort of querying that data. If I build search indexes, I will not be using Couchbase for the search piece. There are better frameworks for search specifically. Elasticsearch being the one that I will be going to. Putting notes on here right now, is there any harm? No, because all the endpoints will remain the same.
I got playful dogs. What happens later if I have to refactor that? Not much. All that I'm going to do is change what object I load and how I do it. So again, talking about the principles, right? The encapsulation piece. The actual behavior of doing this will be resolved in one area, in a handler, not in an actual not in a stack of code, right? So it'll be transparent to the query side. It'll be transparent to the to the API side of query. I mean, not the actual backend. The query obviously changes once I start to get notes, but this will speed up the story of getting the notes for a ticket because I can do that. Disadvantage is my list could get the notes. You could get a count of notes doing it that way pretty quickly. So let's go with that design. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build it based upon notes being attached to tickets. Right? If Matthew joins us again or comes in a future stream and says, oh, that's horrible, that's a really bad design, that's a perfect point to discuss refactoring and how we should do those sorts of things. But it feels okay right now. This is a document database, above all else. It is related to ticket. So let's add that to tickets. Right, that's how we're going to go. So let's actually start at, we should start at the unit test side. We should start the behavioral side first, not the actual API endpoint, although that is going to cause a challenge, right? So concerning support tickets, when note is added, this is pretty much the most primitive test I can write. Ticket has note, right? Note has user ID assigned, user ID added by user ID. Note has date added. We do not have the concept of updating notes at this phase, so I'm not going to worry about the update scenario. Right? It's a down the line sort of challenge. That's what I want to test. Let's add the pieces. Actually, let's stop running, eh? A good first step. Let's add the pieces in for this part. So, we need a subject. So the subject is private add note to support ticket. That's our command, right? So our handler is a subject. So system under test, SUT, subject. I use subject. That's just kind of the way I think about it. So a unit test should only function upon one thing. It should not, everything else should be mocked or faked appropriately, so that you are only verifying the behavior of the one thing with controllable conditions. Sometimes doing that in code bases is hard, but that, again, like you were saying, Martin, before, right? It's getting messy. You're not adhering to the principles in the way you wanted to do it. So you're looking for, where to define the models. I suppose on that topic as well, by the way, defining the models is, again, it's something I have a data layer where I define the data models, the application layer pulls those data models, but the application layer also exposes the view models. So to me, that's that separation. Controllable things, not many of those in my code. I don't know. Some days it feels like the code is working, and some days it feels like this. Just to share, right? This is about to be way more intricate than I want it to be. I feel that this is going to be a bit unwieldy. The API endpoint is going to be troubling from a structuring perspective. This is my gut instinct, just straight off, just working with this, right? Even if I split the notes out into a separate collection, the only difference there is I have a separate collection, a distinct collection that I have to join on. There's more validation required than I would expect here, in that I do need to make sure that the ticket exists before I add the note. So we're going to get into, we're actually going to put in a validator that has to query the data, and it's going to sit before the handler. So this story at first glance, right, seems like, well, let's just update a collection. And this is kind of why it's important as developers to discuss this sort of stuff and make sure that you understand the code well enough, right? I understand this code well enough at this point that I know that no matter which design I choose here, whether it's attached or it's distinct, the only difference in that is a query with a join versus a query. That's it. Everything else is just, it's handled. But, you know, it's so I'm going to do my best to build this, but like I said, controllable things, there's a lot of uncontrollable pieces in here, but by writing consistent layers, holding to my own standards, holding to my own practices, I can change these things, and I can find these things quicker, and I'll feel the pain points quicker because I'm writing consistent code. If I'm just throwing code down as I make it up, right? If I'm not even trying to follow some level of target, and I'm just, now I'll do this, then I'm less likely to introduce these patterns because it's so ad hoc, right? And also, if I had this under a different collection, then this would be concerning support ticket notes. This is still concerning support tickets right now. So the structure of my unit test also reflects the way my application is working. So I don't have that. And then what should happen is I should have a private ticket result, right? And result dot notes dot count should going back on my own thing there, assert dot equal 1, right? Fact note content is set, right? Assert dot equal the not empty result dot notes dot actually that would be better there, not empty, and bar note equals result dot notes dot first, assert equal note content, except that's going to be note content. Private const string note content equals note content. I'm testing what I'm testing, right? I'm making sure that it says note content. I don't need to put in some quirky note. I don't need to put in some quirky names here and there. It's better with test data to be very clear about what you're seeing than try and put in some random data. And definitely my advice if you're writing unit tests is do not try and align your unit test to the business data. The moment you do that, you will introduce implicit assumptions, because some data might come with, oh, well, that's a big customer that does that way, so that must be that, right? Or that's named this, so that must be because of this. It's inadvertent, but it will happen. So when you're writing unit tests and you're writing test data, keep the test data clear. Don't. I've spent plenty of time over the years creating, these, when I'm writing these silly notes and stuff, they don't necessarily matter. But even now, when I'm doing the ads, I'm trying to put the story number that I'm working with them on, right? So I can see them as they actually are intended, right? Name is too long, name is too long, name is too long. I kind of got my point across in that one, right? And my users are slightly quirky, but that's because I'm using my own email to verify I get the email. So I'm just adding the thing on the end. But yeah, it's not advised to keep making quirky test data up, because it will bite you eventually. Okay, so note has added by note. User identifier of note has added by user ID. That's not the same thing. Note captured author user identifier. Right now, I'm thinking notes won't. Notes will be attached to the actual ticket. That's how I'm going to develop it the first time. I don't know if it's the right way. I'm suspecting it's not. I'm suspecting a join is healthier here, using Couchbase more relationally. It will be quicker if they're attached. And they can't live without the ticket. But document DBs do give us that flexibility, right? Where they are there. But again, Couchbase indexing will never find the notes. So I wouldn't be able to say, hey, order the notes in date order within Couchbase. I could only do it within SQL, within the memory, which would be a problem. Now, use case, I don't expect thousands of notes to be added. Wow, that was a precipitous drop of viewers. I hope that what I'm saying isn't offending people. That always concerns me if the viewers are saying 21 minutes and then within a minute it's 10. I assume that's people who've come back and stepped away and whatnot, and now leaving naturally. But sorry, just checking on something. If there are notes inside the ticket, the document may become larger, difficult to update, etc. Yeah, it could do. So let's think about it, right? Benefits are the notes are always associated with the ticket. Notes are not going to be notes in 95% of cases are going to be one or two notes, maybe capturing some information. notes are right now just plain text. I mean, it's a document DB. It won't hurt them. They'll just have no values set for those that data. That's the same way as every other document. Like if I add new fields, that's the benefit of document databases, right? I don't have to create migrations. I can add and remove fields, and the old fields just get left there or whatever. And when I commit them back, they lose that field, I think. But my instinct is this is going to be difficult no matter what. My initial feeling is that adding them onto the ticket is useful in that there will be rare cases where there's many notes, so it kind of creates and if Couchbase didn't offer the SQL syntax, I think I would approach this from that perspective all the time, and that notes would live on the ticket, because in Mongo, etc., it's harder to join collections, and therefore relational data doesn't matter as much. You too, Copper Beardy. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out. Appreciate you. Have a great weekend. And take care. Adding versions to documents may be one way. Yes. Yeah, versioning would be. So the pros of having them underneath the document, underneath the ticket, so notes attached to ticket as an actual object. It's associated, it's nice and simple. It is in one place, I can pull the data. The majority of tickets are not going to have many notes. If I put it as an actual separate collection, I now can index those notes based upon users, dates, etc. But do I need to index on user when the notes would? No, I wouldn't need to index on user. It wouldn't matter. I think the cost of adding them to the ticket actually might be harder. Ugh. Well, this just highlights the challenge, right? This is I like this, right? Because this means that, you know, what seems instinctive doesn't necessarily mean it's right. I can't go wrong here, right? As long as I'm willing to change the code if I get it wrong, I can't go wrong. So if Matthew did come in and say, "Hey, why don't you put the notes underneath the ticket?" right? And I'd be like, "Why?" And we had a discussion as to the benefits of it, and we decided, "Oh, that's actually a good point. We could do it that way." Then I'm not scared of changing the code. Because at the end of the day, the tickets, the tickets, the tickets, the notes, the notes. But being that you cannot have a note without a ticket, having the collection is just adding that extra set of resources. Whereas if I put them underneath the ticket, they're not indexed at all. I probably could create an index on the nested object. Let's see if there's a best practice guide. Couchbase data best practices. Security. Tickets can be linked to tickets. We haven't talked about that requirement yet. This is management of the server, not documents. Yeah, that's SDKs, server. Performance best practices. Avoid asynchronously waiting for each loops. Da 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 da. That makes sense. Do not use parallel for each. Do use parallel for each async. Use batching. Avoid. This is how to work with the system, not how to design the data. That's the challenge there. Although I would imagine that is hidden behind some nice consultancy fees. Not from Couchbase perspective, I mean from other people, right? That's the sort of stuff that is the stuff people end up paying for. Is, oh, how do I do this effectively? Sub-documents. The little fly that just flew right towards my eye. Here we go. High-performance sub-document API for more efficient use of network bandwidth when fetching entire documents. Sub-document operations may be quicker and more... Well, hold on. Sub-documents... Okay, so this is kind of exactly the sort of thing, right? So in here we have customer 123. And on customer we have the addresses and the purchases. These purchases are just IDs, right? So this is kind of like the same principle as my tenant user, right? Tenant user is injected into the Couchbase piece just so that we have the name of the user that the note is assigned to right now. But these are full addresses. But this is an object within. This is not an array. This is an object with billing and delivery. This is a purchases of complete and abandoned with arrays, but these are IDs out to the things. So I could still put notes on tickets so that I could not do the join, but then I've got SQL++. So what would I be doing that for? But I assume what that means is I could use this to track the tickets as sub-documents. So retrieving sub-document value, addresses.delivery.country. Mutating, upsert. Arrays also support treating arrays like unique sets. But then what would be the benefit if I have a ticket ID on a... then if I don't do a join, then the ticket would have the note and the note would be floating. My thought there was, I kind of floated. I use the same word again. I kind of hovered straight over that one. My thought there was if I have a tickets, so this is a tickets collection, right? And that has a name, a description, whatever. And then this has notes, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have a notes collection, which is an ID 1, content Bob, right? This does not have ticket identifier, ticket ID on it, right? So a note has to be attached to something. And we don't track the ID it's attached to on the ticket itself. We have the note out there. And that's a sub-document, and that's just an ID to that note, and then that note can be looked up separately. But what's the value? That's exactly what left join is. Why not put ticket identifier or ticket ID on here, right? And then the query is select star from tickets, join notes on notes dot ticket ID equals tickets dot ID, right? or even better, you don't even need to do that. You just need to do select star from notes, where ticket ID equals ID, and that will pull that in. So suppose that's how do I want to order the query? How do I want to pull the data? What's my use case for this? Well, right now my use case is I need to see all notes for a ticket, right? Well, my use case right now is I need to add a ticket. This version supports it the best. Having it there means I have to pull the ticket to get the notes. Yep, I'm convinced. I'm going to create a separate collection. Right. I'm going to do it that way. And again, if we get Matthew to pop back in the stream at some point in the future, then that'll be awesome, because that'll mean that we'll be able to discuss this and show the design. So let me quickly review. I'm going to see how I'm going to try and get through this unit test, and then I'm going to. Unfortunately, I can't stream all day. I'd love to. I could happily sit here for hours and hours doing this. I do genuinely love getting back into this. It's a great deal of fun. But I'm going to order myself some food, some breakfast, lunch. And that way, that kind of gives me that timer, right? Oh no. Your order's got a little luckier if you consider it luck, and that the place I would order from is not open, so this takes a little longer. So yeah, moving this up here now, right? So moving concerning support ticket notes, because now notes will be their own concept. It doesn't involve support ticket directly. So I'm not going. It belongs under its own organization. It should be distinct. It is treated that way. So I just need to change how I write this code, right? So let me quickly see if I can order this, and then that gives me about 30 minutes. And I've got some time. Of course, I'm in one of those sorts of I don't actually feel very hungry sort of meals. I've got to eat something. Okay. Let's go with that. Okay. And that. So sorry, I don't like doing this while I'm streaming, but it's more practical to do this now than it is to try and do it after the stream and then spend that time. So there we go. Okay. So add note to support ticket. It's still going to be the same thing, right? This doesn't change. The act was always going to be its own command. the outcome is what changes, right? So instead of a ticket here, right, I need to verify that I added a ticket, so note was added. And note content is set. Note captured author user identifier. Note has date added, right? These are still valid, right? So I have a data, I have the model, right? So let's create a note. This isn't, so the idea of unit TDD would be that I kind of create the structure, I define what I need, and then I kind of piece them the parts, right? So here, my private note result, right? That isn't the actual result. So this is now assert not null result. This is now assert result.content. This is now assert dot equal author identifier result dot author user identifier. They are the author of the note. Do I need to be explicit and say the author of the note, or should I say user identifier? Let's say user identifier. Feels better. Assert dot. So I have is within. I kind of did this last time, right? And it is in work. So again, I don't like. I like fluent assertions as a library. I think it adds a lot of value to the readability of the code. But because my testing style is one of positive versus negative, so if it's green, it did the thing. If it's red, it didn't do the thing. And because I don't do arrange act assert in each one of these. I don't write note should exist, right? I don't like the should. I prefer the positive it did. So if it is green, it happened. There's no meh, it kind of didn't happen, right? So if I use fluent assertions, I then introduce should, even though it adds readability, right? So I did need a date range one, right? So this is within, and this is the expected time span. So time span dot from seconds 1, and then this is the result dot date added, right? So I should expect it to have happened within a second, right? I shouldn't really expect this to take very much longer than a second to add this. So I'm putting my assertions in. This code doesn't build, so I can't say that this is red green yet, right? Let's refactor that, adjust the namespace so it actually represents the reality. So let's start to add in some of these pieces, right? So this is a collection document. Collection is notes. Yeah, I'm going to go with that for now. That's going to trip me up in the future and cause all manner of chaos. Let's do public. Yeah, we'll go with that. It can't be null. So public grid user identifier. Public date time date added. That'll do. Actually, that can go there. What else do we have? We had content captured, date added, note was added, right? So we don't really need this test. That test there is really just adding tests for the sake of tests, right? If any one of these other things fails, it's not working, right? If they fail because that object reference is null, then it still failed, right? The note content wasn't set. So this is just adding a test for the sake of bumping that number up. I don't need to test that, right? These will validate that just fine because there's no, you shouldn't be putting null. You should not be putting null forgiving operators on these things, right? These should be exactly that. So private GUID, author identifier equals new GUID. Okay, so I just need to kind of construct this now. So let's go to our application layer. This is a command. Now, I'm not organizing this as yet. Once we get to several more features, the structure in here is going to become harder, right? This is add note to support ticket. I was saying note's going to trip me up in the future. That's called notes, right? And I'm associating it with a ticket, which I'm actually not doing right this second because I haven't added a test for that. But I really need to pay attention to when the ads are going to run. But what if I add a note on a story? What if I add a note on another thing? Do I have a type on here? Do I have something else? Do I have ticket notes versus story notes? How do I maintain that linearity, right? Because again, if it starts as a ticket and becomes a story, that's fine. But if it starts as a story and it never was a ticket, then there's no associated ticket created for it. And again, I haven't really figured out how that evolution is going to work, so I'm not going to panic about it, right? I can tackle that design challenge down the line. I can literally kick that can straight down the line because I'm not having to concern myself with that right now. But it is something that will trip me up in the future. But again, I don't want to code for what I don't know I need. Because if I'm coding for what I think I need, I'm going to write lies. So I'm going to be strong. I'm going to make sure that I just build what I need and adapt appropriately. But I do need to attach the ticket, right? So fact note is attached to ticket. So here assert.equal ticket identifier result.ticket identifier. Ticket identifier. Okay, and then we go up here, private grid. So quite a while ago, I had a disagreement with a friend over the unit testing because I used to put defined values in here. I'd generate a GUID and it'd always be the same. And then he's like, why are we doing this? We just generate a GUID. It's going to be the same throughout the test, so it doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, but what if you kind of you see a screen full of GUIDs and that GUID stands out because you know what it's going to be? He's like, we can debug it, right? You shouldn't be writing that much that it should be that confusing. So I kind of lost my own argument because I argued almost for overcomplicating it. So having a new GUID there doesn't hurt me because the test is kind of small and should be not that complicated, right? That's the point of the unit test. If the unit test is starting to look like real code, like functional real code, then you've got a problem. And that was his argument, and it was perfectly valid. I couldn't really debate that. So now I do this. So let's go back to note. Let's put ticket identifier in there. So public. So this is going to have public GUID ticket identifier, right? So that all now will work. Let's go to our application, add note to support ticket. So again, this is a public record command. I need to kind of come up with a pattern here as I grow. What is the most logical way I'm going to approach this, and what should I do? Right? maybe I plan these as, and this might seem really simple, arguments to a command, right? But it matters because, again, consistency. If I'm seeing the same pattern over and over and over again, I can trust the data that is going to be the thing that I think it is, and I don't have to question it. I can move on. I can make assumptions based upon the known truths. So what information do I need first is what I should be asking, right? So here I need a tenant identifier, right? Then I need a ticket identifier. Thank you, Copilot. Then I need a user identifier. Then I need a string. And that should just about do it, right? I command. We can do that. So in order of priority, right? I need a tenant. Above all else, I need a tenant. So I should probably go back and modify my other commands to be tenant first, right? Because tenant matters in all cases first. Then the ticket, I need to know which ticket I'm talking about. I can't know the ticket I'm talking about if I don't have the tenant, because that's necessary. And then the user, I need to attach the user. So it's necessary, but it's not necessary for the retrieval of that ticket. And then the content is what I'm going to add, right? So there we go. So now let's create our command handler. Blah, 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 blah. So this is not what I want, right? I want a result, right? I don't want. I'm going back to Martin's comment about the design earlier on, right? Leaking up the models and stuff would be dangerous. I do not want to return my model, my data model, up to my API layer. Right. This is the guard point. Right. Nothing database related goes up from this point. So no matter where I use this code, no matter what instance I use it in, the thing that invokes it should never know about the data that it's working with. It should know it's been told, here's a response, and that keeps everything consistent. So we got about 20 minutes until we are out of time. So let's see how far we can get with it. So add note to support ticket, right? Throw new not implemented exception. Let's do that. And this is actually the risk of using something like Copilot, right? Copilot almost suggested the exact code I should have used. I could just hit tab, right? But I need to trust the process here a little bit. I'm trying to build this unit test using TDD. I'm trying to make sure that I run, fail, succeed, right? And I'm succeeding for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons, right? So this test should build and run. It should go all red, right? Now it's failing because of the null reference, right? It's actually getting to the result, right? Because I didn't invoke anything. I didn't change anything, right? But the result is 100% null. Do I understand why it's failing? Yes. Okay, I can move on. Now, I need to configure the subject. I need to configure something to be able to get the result. So my pattern is, and again, for those who haven't seen it, what I do is I create a constructor, and in here I call two methods, arrange and act. Below here, I create arrange and, go on, help me. There we go, act. So identify, that's an interesting word. I don't need the labels because it's going to be obvious what they are. Get a waiter, get result. That works better overall. And result here is not the same thing, so I don't need that result, right? Because if it's succeeded, everything will be fine. So let's go and change this to be ticket identifier. right? Let's create a private GUID tenant identifier. And as much as this is the kind of the author, I'm not doing myself any favors by introducing a new term there. I'm not doing myself any favors by introducing the concept of an author when an author doesn't exist in the context of the data. So let's make sure that's user identifier. So now I have an arrange. I've got my subject, right? And I have an act which will do the thing. So this will happen per test, right? Now some people might put all this into one test, right? But I think it's clearer to make these explicit. Yes, it runs these per test, and yes, these get executed multiple times and populated. But I'm not talking to a database. I'm talking to mock objects. It's just fine. Let's run it again and see that we get a different type of exception. We should expect not implemented, right? So there we go. Let's implement let's implement. So we go here, and to implement this, we need to do we need a work item context. So using var unit of work equals context dot begin command dot tenant identifier. That works perfectly fine for me. I don't mind doing a little bit of cheating. So we have the ticket identifier, the user identifier, the content of it, and the date added UTC now. I'm going to store all dates as UTC. Unit of work. Again, Copilot, I love that you're presumptive based upon the thing I called context, but that's not unit of work dot. Oh, hold on. Is that await using? Oh no, await there. Sorry, being a little dense. Right? No. Am I forgetting how to use my own API here? Oh, I've been picked up quicker. Bar unit of work. Oh, it's not disposable. That's I've made it. I've made that more confusing than it needs to be. Okay, so unit of work dot add note. Wait, add. Return result.success for right this second, right? We have no way of knowing anything else, right? If this crashes again, I'm not holding to I'm not holding to, you know, if it crashes, it crashes. I'll fix that later, but I don't know of any scenario this fails right this second. Okay, so if I do that, right? Why don't you pass? Right? So, oh, why is this failing? Oh, there's no argument that corresponds. I need a mock. So private I unit I work item context equals no. And down here in my arrange, I get a substitute. Again, I'm not creating anything real here. I'm not creating any database connections. I need to now pass that into not into my act, into my arrange. I need to pass that work item context into there. And now that should build, that should run, and that should still fail, but it should not fail for the same reasons, right? Right, now it goes back to null reference because now my result isn't set. So what I need to do now is create a few other things, right? So my work item context is where I get my unit of work from. So I need a unit of work, right? Unit of work. But that's created by my work item context, right? So let's create and substitute. Again, we're substituting it. We're not creating a real thing. The only real thing being tested is our note to support ticket handler, right? And then in work item context, we can say when you call begin, arg is tenant identifier, returns unit of work, right? So we'll give back our unit of work mock, right? So we're controlling that. And then unit of work dot add, I think it is, arg is arg any note, do x goes to, actually it's prompting me there, result equals arg note. Oh no, when. Sorry, not when, not do. So what that says is when I call yeah. When I call add on the unit of work with any note, do populate note equal to the value of that note, right? So the very last one that was called, so if this was happening 6 or 7 times, it would populate that with the 7th one, right? What that should do now is it should populate when I call add, and this should pass. No, it does not pass. Why does it not pass? Why am I being overly confident? Unit of work, rearrange, react. That's the same exception though, right? So that's no reference. So we call add on the unit of work. We definitely do that, right? Debugging unit tests is something that you hope not to have to do, but it's unfortunately sometimes necessary. And here I'm trying to do it to understand where I've gone wrong there, right? Because I'm not trying to be arrogant or like boastful with this, but when it works really well and it feels comfortable. So when it feels comfortable, I don't question it and I just assume, okay, yeah, I'm making the right sort of progress. Everything's working. Yep. There is interceptors. You don't even want to go into how proxy objects work, etc., and those sorts of things. That is a whole different level of development. Date time. So the note is set. We have all the identifiers, and I didn't put any specificity on the test, right? So on the context. So this should, unless it has to happen beforehand, does this have to be configured to happen? Otherwise, it returns. I don't think that should work. So x to add arg any note. So when we call add with any note, we do a callback. I suppose we can put a breakpoint here, right? We could put a breakpoint here. Debug. Result is null, so it doesn't do the right thing. I've done this. I did this elsewhere. I swear I did. When, yeah, unit of work add result is equal to that. And look, I did it exactly the same way, right? Is tenant identifier. This is all right. Okay. Okay. That's exactly what I did in the test. Suppose let's verify all the tests. Pass or fail, right? Made sure I haven't introduced some weird bugs. Okay, no, the other tests work. So what am I missing? So I add the work item context, I add the unit of work, I set up the work item context, I return that. I then configure the unit of work and I pass in the work item context. Then I call handle. Pretty sure that is almost identical. When ticket is added and is assigned, arrange and act. So let's verify it actually gets to this point. If it doesn't get to here, then that's obviously why, but I just failed, didn't it? Oh, no, I didn't debug it, right? I hit run, not debug. Okay, so let's go there. Then we hit there. Then we hit here. Info, arguments, argument. Oh, it's null. Why is it null? Oh, that's ticket, not debugging the wrong one there. That is also a downside. When your tests look almost identical, you are going to it's not hitting a breakpoint though. A note is added. So in the original code, in the other code that does run, that happens. Am I being when note is added, right? Getting there. Okay, we get to note is added. We get in there. We get in there. We don't get in there. So I must be doing something different in the actual handler. Unit of work that add. Can't really do that much differently, right? That's the point. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, right? Await unit of work that add, unit of work equals begin ticket. That pattern is exactly the same pattern. So what did I break? Oh. I'm not getting a unit of work. The weird thing there is actually that the code is not failing. It's giving me a unit of work back, but it's not the unit of work. So it gives me something that isn't this one. It isn't this configured one. So I get a unit of work. I just don't get the unit of work I need to deal with. So that is another issue with mocks because they pretend they do generate on the fly. Yeah, that was my problem. I'm 100%. There you go. So we can add a note, right? That's what that tells me. Right, we've got the handle in place. We can add a note. So I'm going to finish up. So what I've started doing, by the way, is if you're interested, again, I will post it just in case in the Discord. If I do work after the stream, especially if it's something that I kind of leave hanging a little bit, I will attempt to update the after the stream channel, right? So I have created a channel in the Discord for after the stream, and I'll add any notes. So anything I do after the fact, you won't necessarily miss. So if you were engaged in what I was trying to do, I won't leave it behind. Nice. Acid, thank you very much for the follow. Very much appreciate that. And again, any questions, any thoughts, any opinions. If you want to discuss software more, if you want to ask questions, like, I mean, I don't know if I even answered Martin's question enough, because there was no follow up, sadly. But I don't mind talking about this stuff. Acid, thank you very much for the raid. I appreciate that. What have you been up to today? Well, we'll be hanging on for a little while longer. Acid, you get a. What have you been doing? C# full stack stuff. Nice. How's that been going? We'll stay watching your content. Unfortunately, Acid, I am ending, but that's unfortunately, I can't avoid that at this point. Love C# and the people from my channel is here for your content. Nice. Well, I do appreciate it. I do apologize for almost immediately running, but let me talk about what I actually am doing before we get to that point. So just stick around for a minute. I'll explain. So I am building an agile project management platform. I have been working on this for a few months now, on and off. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been streaming pretty frequently. I do stream Monday to Friday, 719 Eastern. Today is a bit of an exception, as I have some vacation from work. So what we've been working on today is adding notes. The whole idea of this is, I believe in developing clean software. I want to make software developers' lives easier. So I'm going to try and build my own platform for project management, similar to Jira and Trello and other tools like that. And allow me to put my own perspective on this. So I'm sharing the development of this as I go. I am sharing some of the libraries that I build off of this on my GitHub, and you can check out that below. And also I have my Discord, where you can join and talk about more of this stuff. Basically, I've been building this based upon, this is using Couchbase, it's using Kafka, it's using API gateways, SQL Server, and what we're doing is kind of constructing the pieces, building out stories, and going through that entire process and using it as an example of, here's what I do, not here's the right way, right? I don't like saying what I do is the right way. What I like to say is, what I do is my way, and it makes sense for me, and it works, and I can build effective, clean software that I'm happy to share my approach with. And I'm always open to listening to other people and to what their approaches are. I've been doing software development for over 20 years. So it is something I love doing. It's something I'm passionate about, and it's something I think we can definitely take pride in. So, and I do. I'm proud of what I do. It is not Windows Forms app. So the way I'm building this is, I'm building this as a platform using only an API first. So I am building this with no UI. The reason being, I feel that the UI often leads us to decisions, right? Oh, I want this on this screen and I want this here. Okay, I'll make that an API endpoint, or I'll make this. So I'm going to try and stay as pure as I can to the data and to the actual needs of the application, and analyze those requirements before I actually do deliver software. So I will put UIs on this. And what building an API before worrying about UI means is, I can later on come along and say, hey, I want to play with React. I want to play with Angular. I want to play with Blazor. I want to play with X framework. I want to use this tool, this tool, this tool. I can use all those tools and build effective applications without worrying about the app being there. The structure of the app will be there. I don't have to worry about building all that at the same time. I can tinker with those applications. And that's, again, what I'll share on the stream is things like, hey, I'm going to build a UI for it in Blazor. I'm going to build a UI for it using Angular, and I'm going to use SignalR, right? Because again, I can hook SignalR in and I can listen to events in Kafka and say, hey, a new tenant was created. Ta-da, here you go. I can do all sorts of things there. So this will be a long-term project. I do also do some bot development on the stream, and I will be doing some challenges coming up. So again, if you join the Discord, there's a channel there for upcoming streams and stuff. And in there, I've got a poll going right now that is basically next Friday. I will be working on a viewer selected challenge. I picked 3 that I felt I could comfortably look at in a stream, but the votes are available there. And next week I will work on figuring out how to write a Redis server or something like that. Sounds like a hard thing to do from the perspective of the back end of that. Yeah, I mean, I'm a strong back end developer. I'm not a strong front end developer, but yeah. So unfortunately, I do have to go. I have food waiting on me. It is actually currently sat on my front doorstep. So we will raid out. That'd be super trolly to raid. Oh, okay. Apex is streaming. So we'll go over to Apex. So Apex is a game developer. They're building a game in a similar manner. They're building it from the ground up. You know, they're building the back end pieces and everything like that. They're using Godot and C#, so you know the C# is not lost. Apex is learning that they are relatively new to game development, but they are there. So stop back in. Acid, thank you very much for the follow. I really appreciate it. And the raid. That is fantastic. Thank you. I do apologize that I was finishing up. And yeah, I will be back next week. I might be over the weekend, but I have some plans. So let's go see Apex, because I will be going sitting there anyway as I eat my breakfast. So it's only fair to send you over there. So thank you very much. I will see you again. Essa, if you could post that article in the Discord, I'll happily check that out, and we can maybe continue a little bit of discussion as to the right design there in the Discord. So thank you all. I appreciate you all. Thank you for the bits. Thank you for the follows and everything else. And this is starting to really take off, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.